That's disgusting. I'm ashamed of you right now. Can't you see how much pain we're in? What makes you think we wouldn't have been happy? That we won't be happy? How could you talk about Lily as if she's already dead?
You'd be better off if she dies. In fact, I'm disappointed that Chelsea didn't pass away with her. It certainly would have saved you the trouble.
You need to leave. If you're not out of here in 30 seconds, I'm calling security. Don't bother visiting again.
My name is Chelsea. I should start by saying that I didn't want it to end the way it did. In fact, if I could remove this entire series of events from my life, I would. The only thing that I would want back would be my baby boy. At the time, I was 28 years old and worked at a hotel as a receptionist. I had been married for a few years, and my husband, Richard, would bring me lunch in the afternoon. We had been trying for a kid for a long time, and we had just started an experimental treatment recommended by our doctor. Our family was ecstatic. Everybody was excited for a new addition to the family, and both of our parents couldn't wait to be grandparents. When I finally found out that I was pregnant, I planned a massive reveal party in the lobby of the hotel for when my husband came to visit. However, much to my surprise, he had decided to bring my mother-in-law Helen along to visit. I surprised him anyways, and my boss brought out cake for us to celebrate. My mother-in-law was more than excited and jumped for joy.
Congratulations, you guys! I can't believe I finally get to be a grandmother. Do you have a due date yet?
Not yet. I just found out yesterday. I'll be going to the doctor to see when the expected due date will be within the next week or so.
When do we find out if it'll be a boy or not?
Probably not for another few months. The baby needs time to develop still. What makes you think it'll be a boy?
It's always a boy. Boys are better, and girls can easily become only fangirls. I don't want that. Our family only ever makes boys. Plus, we need to have an heir to carry on the family name.
I'm hoping for a daughter. I think being a girl mom and playing dress-up or anything else would be very fun. I would love a boy too.
I doubt it'll be a girl. I think you should start picking out boy names now. That way, you can have something decided in time for the baby shower.
Well, I guess we'll find out. I didn't find it weird at the time. I didn't like that my mother-in-law was there for the reveal, since I wanted something more private with Richard. But I've never had any bad blood with his parents either. It wasn't until later that it started annoying me. Over the following weeks, she would send me her selection of boy names and start buying boys' clothing. We warned her that if it was a girl, then she would have wasted her money, but she didn't listen. We wrote it off as one of her hidden quirks and continued on with our lives. We were excited to finally have the family we dreamed of. Of course, when we found out it was going to be a girl, we were immediately in love. We chose the name Lily, after the Lillian Cafe where we had met, and told the rest of the family. His mother was furious after finding this out and called us instantly.
Of course it's a girl. I should have known you would ruin it.
Excuse me?
We could have had another beautiful baby boy, but instead you had to poison it. No wonder it took you so long to conceive. God must have been stopping you from destroying our family.
What are you talking about? How dare you talk to me like that? This is our child, and you should love her no matter what her gender is.
You don't understand. We needed a boy to carry on the family name, and instead you give us a useless girl.
Richard stood by and didn't say anything. After I hung up, he tried to comfort me, but I pushed him off. I couldn't believe he didn't defend our daughter, and I, to his mother. I was angry and upset and left the room. Afterwards, we made up and talked it out. He explained that his mother had always loved the idea of having a son, but he never knew she would go this far. He was more stunned than anything by her reaction, which is why he took so long to act. We decided that, moving forward, we wouldn't tell her anything about the pregnancy. All of the information she gathered was from other family members or friends, and we would know she found out, as she would text us as soon as she did. I stopped looking at the hate-filled messages and passing it off to my husband to respond. The months went by and my stomach grew. I was able to get maternity leave from my work so that I could spend the first 8 months with my newborn. I hosted a baby shower with my friends, which Helen attempted to crash, but the security kicked her out. Helen began making passive-aggressive posts to social media, making wide claims about what a family should be and how horrible wives can ruin things. Richard told her to take them down, but she claimed that if I was relating to the posts, then maybe I had some introspection to do.
I told you, she just gets weird about these sorts of things. I'm sure it's nothing personal. She liked you before.
But now I'm the mother to her grandchild, and to your child. It's not going to go back to how it was before. What if she stays like this? What if she never stops making these comments, and our daughter has to grow up hearing how much her grandmother hates her?
Don't think like that. I'm sure that it will be fine. And as soon as she lays eyes on her, she'll forget all about it. After all, who can hate a face with a nose like yours?
Oh, stop? Yeah, you're right. Maybe I am just overthinking everything. I just want to know it'll all be okay.
It will be. I promise.
2 weeks before the due date, I woke up in contractions. Richard and I raced out to the car, drove to the hospital, and quickly found ourselves situated in a delivery room. The nurse said that we had gotten there just in time. The baby was turned around the wrong way inside me and was having a hard time entering the birth canal. We opted for an emergency C-section to make sure the baby wouldn't suffocate. Within a few hours, the baby was delivered. I was allowed to hold Lily for a minute before she was passed into one of those incubation baskets. The doctors needed to run some checks on her to make sure she was healthy. I passed out from the myriad of drugs in my system and the weight of delivering a baby pressing down on me. My husband was by my side. When I woke up from the nap, the doctor delivered the bad news. The baby had been without oxygen for too long and wasn't doing well. They were going to keep her in emergency care and do everything they could. I was devastated and collapsed into tears. Helen arrived at the hospital soon after. Richard stepped out into the hallway to explain, but I could hear them clearly through the door.
That's what she gets. Call it karma or what have you, but at least the problem is solved.
Mom, don't talk like that. That's horrible. We might lose our daughter.
Now you can try for a son. This is a blessing, don't you see? The way it was meant to be.
It took us 3 years before we finally were able to have a child. What makes you think that we can do it again so easily?
It's always been that way. Hopefully she'll have learned her lesson and heal quickly. You'll have another chance to have even more kids. Wouldn't you be happier with a boy?
That's disgusting. I'm ashamed of you right now. Can't you see how much pain we're in? What makes you think we wouldn't have been happy? That we won't be happy? How could you talk about Lily as if she's already dead?
You'd be better off if she dies. In fact, I'm disappointed that Chelsea didn't pass away with her. It certainly would have saved you the trouble.
You need to leave. If you're not out of here in 30 seconds, I'm calling security. Don't bother visiting again.
Richard entered the room again, and just before the door closed, I could see Helen walking away. I was disgusted, disturbed, tired, and more. I just wanted to go home, to bring my daughter home. We were another week in the hospital before Lily was cleared. She had responded extremely well to treatment and didn't seem to have many lasting effects. We still brought her back to the hospital once a week to make sure she was improving, and it seemed to be going well. Helen tried to visit a few more times, but Richard had refused her at the door. When his dad tried to argue with him to let them see their grandchild, he told them that this was no grandchild of theirs, and that they shouldn't come by anymore. Sure enough, we saw them less and less over the following year. Helen would occasionally make a social media post full of vitriol, but even those became easy to block out. Our happy family grew, we celebrated many milestones, and I returned to work as well. Richard decided to stay at home with the baby, and I got a promotion at my job as well, so I could take care of the family. On Lily's second birthday, we found out his grandmother had breast cancer that was threatening to spread through her chest. She had desperately wanted to apologize and wanted us to come back into her life. We refused, even against multiple family members reaching out to apologize on her behalf. We're entering 3 years since we saw her last, and we couldn't be happier with Lily never knowing that horrible woman. We don't feel bad about it. In fact, I find it almost an ironic karmic justice. By her rejecting her granddaughter for not being a boy, she had also lost her son. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.
You're going to abort that thing. Who knows? If you give birth to him, he might end up with one disability like you. You mustn't bring that child out.
No, I won't kill my child. I'm going to birth him and take care of him myself. It seemed as if that was what he wanted to hear.
Perfect. Give birth to him and take care of him yourself. I disown him from this moment.
Hi, my name is Shirley. I got into an accident at a very young age that rendered me blind in one eye and had to walk by limping on one leg. As a result of that, I often got bullied while growing up. On top of that, I lost my parents in my late teenage years. It was a hard period for me, but the only thing I could do to survive was get a job. That was even harder for me, because people hardly wanted to take me in. They thought it would be hard for customers to communicate with a partially blind person, and also hard to move around quickly. Eventually, I was employed as a typist in a paper company. They needed someone who knew how to type speedily and deliver well. Luckily for me, I was a great typist. I loved to type. Also, I didn't have to communicate with customers nor move around. They were scared to employ me at first, seeing that I was half blind. But I managed to prove my efficiency to them, and I was hired. I wasn't opportune to continue my college education after my parents' death, so I worked harder instead, saving up some amount every month to resume my college education later. But as time went by, I realized that going to college would need me to quit my job, and I couldn't afford to quit. So instead, I switched from saving for college to saving for a house of my own. By the time I'd worked for 3 years, I'd gathered enough money to get a small house of my own, and more than enough to put things in it, and still had some more left. I was only 23 then. I got my house, a small bungalow. Rather than buy the furnitures and other things after, I decided to buy a house which had everything in it. It cost more, but it was a great decision. Also, it was close to my workplace. My life was going smoothly, and I was happy. A year later, I met Jack. He worked as a nurse and was earning quite a lot. He was also a very kind and generous person. After being friends for a few months, we confessed our feelings for each other. Jack introduced me to his parents, and they were so down to earth. They joked around with each other, and their home boldly screamed how much love was poured in it.
What about your parents, dear?
I told her about their death, and they sympathized with me. Seeing how lovely they were, I was convinced that I'd gotten into the perfect hands. About 6 months later, Jack and I got married. It was quite a quiet wedding, with just his friends and family members present. I didn't have parents or friends, so no one was present for me. But Jack's parents, particularly his mother, never made me feel bad about it. One would mistake me for her child instead of Jack. Before the wedding, Jack and I had agreed to live in my house. Since he lived in a rented apartment, he said it would be better to move into my house, and I agreed. Our first few months were great. We both worked hard in preparation for when we were both ready to start birthing children. However, 6 months later, Jack suddenly announced that he quit his job. "Why did you do that?" I exclaimed.
Don't raise your voice at me. I have my reason, and you'll love.
All right, let's hear your reason.
I want to become a full-time musician. With the money I saved up while working, I would register in a music school, and in a few months, I'll be a great, successful singer and be rich.
I was dumbfounded. Honestly, I expected that he was going to tell me about a new business he was going to start. But of all things, music. Even if he wanted to do music, he didn't have to quit his job for it. Music. You quit being a successful nurse because you want to do music.
Why do you sound like you're looking down on it?
I'm just really disappointed, honey. How could you abandon your job for music that you know nothing about? It's senseless.
Coming from a disabled woman who can only work as a typist all her life, I'm quite surprised.
Was I shocked? Insanely. Jack had never insulted me with my disabilities. Jack suddenly doing that felt like my heart was pierced by a sword. With tears in my eyes, I asked him, "How could you say that to me, Jack?"
Oh, but I didn't lie. You can barely walk or see well. Do you think you have a right to speak about a person's passion? If you have any, you can never bring it to life. Is that why you're against me doing the same?
I was hurt. I tried to make him stop, but he only continued taunting me.
If you wanted to be a runner, you would fall face down before your first step.
Stop this, Jack. Stop it already.
Would you still be able to see me if I cover your right eyes?
I was in tears.
Whether you like it or not, I'm doing music.
What about our expenses? I can't take care of it all alone.
Oh, dear wife, you will. In fact, you must.
I watched him hop out of the living room. From then on, my life became hell. I covered every expenses with my money. Every day, Jack would force me to leave some money with him after breakfast. I began to arrive late at work. It got to a point that my boss noticed and began to complain about it. Right about the same period, I fell pregnant. I was devastated, broken. I didn't want to add a baby to what I was going through, but there was nothing I could do about it. No one I could turn to for help. My in-laws had relocated to Germany after our wedding. I was all alone. Jack wasn't helping matters either. He helped with nothing. All he did was take money from me, eat my food, and go to the music academy every day. At night, I was mostly unable to sleep as his annoying singing voice always filled the room. Jack's voice was nothing to write home about. That alone made me wonder even more why he thought he could be a successful singer. I kept my pregnancy a secret from him, but it didn't take long before he began to suspect. Eventually, I revealed the truth to him.
What? Pregnant? No way. You can't be pregnant.
I asked why he said that, and he made me know that he didn't want to have a child until he'd become a famous and wealthy singer.
You're going to abort that thing. Who knows? If you give birth to him, he might end up with one disability like you. You mustn't bring that child out.
No, I won't kill my child. I'm going to birth him and take care of him myself. It seemed as if that was what he wanted to hear.
Perfect. Give birth to him and take care of him yourself. I disown him from this moment.
He disowned a child who hadn't even been brought to life. I was heartbroken and even more disappointed. I walked away, trying to block my ears from listening to how loud he was laughing at me, but I heard his voice until I entered our room. I visited a hospital 1 month later. My morning sickness had worsened and I was feeling sharp pain around my waist, making it quite hard to stand up. At the hospital, the doctor made me know that all I needed was rest. He asked if I had a job, and I replied that I did. He then warned me to limit stressing myself. I nodded in understanding, but I knew it wouldn't be possible to reduce it. Jack helped with nothing. I did every single thing myself. On getting home, I told him everything the doctor told me. It would be nice if you help with at least half of the chores so I don't have to stress too much. The doctor warned me. I was shut up with a loud slap on my cheek. I held the slapped area in pain. "Why did you do that?" I asked him, tears gathering in my eyes.
Don't you ever dare ask me to do house chores, especially not for that unknown thing growing in you.
Unknown thing? Our child had become an unknown thing? I let him be. He continued with his stupid attitudes and I kept on enduring it. However, what broke me was the last thing he did before I decided to report him to his mother. I'd been saving some money for over 3 months. Jack discovered it and went behind my back to clear my bank. Before I got home, he'd left. He sent a video to me later on in a swimming pool with a few ladies with him. In the caption, he wrote, "I'm preparing for my life when I become a successful singer. I borrowed your money. Don't worry about it. I'll pay up when I'm rich." Without wasting time, I put a call through to his mother and explained everything that had been happening since the beginning. She didn't seem surprised.
I always feared he would turn out like this. His father and I will be in the country tomorrow.
I was relieved that they were coming to my aid, but I couldn't understand what she meant when she said she knew he would turn out that way. Anyway, they truly arrived the next day. His father called Jack and asked him to return home quickly, lying that something very important came up. While his father went out for some fresh air, I approached him mother for clarity.
Oh dear, his father was just like him. He's currently jobless and feeds on my money. When I was pregnant with Jack, I suffered more from his father.
I was shocked. The man appeared so kind. Anyway, Jack returned home that day. That same night, his mother confronted him.
You quit your job for music? That was a stupid and senseless move. You've also been mocking your wife's condition and making her do everything all by herself. You're just like your stupid father.
Honey, not in front of the kids.
Oh, shut up. By the way, I'm divorcing you. I've prepared everything since 1 week ago. I'm tired of putting up with your stupidity and laziness. And as for you, Jack, I'm disappointed. Shirley's going to divorce you too.
I was ready to divorce him. After all, he added nothing good to my life. They both went on their knees, pleading.
Don't do this to us. Darling, say something, please.
I turned my eyes away. I knew they were only begging because they'd be nothing without us. My mother-in-law chased them out like thieves, not allowing them to take any of their properties with them. We divorced both father and son. My mother-in-law encouraged me to sell my house and follow her back to Germany. There, she established a clothing business for me and assisted me in buying a new house with the money I got from selling my first house. My clothing business flourished and my baby grew within me, strong and healthy. Soon, as my business expanded, I had to bring in more hands. I bought a bigger house and moved in with my mother-in-law. I also stopped her from working and put her on a monthly salary for just existing. While we both continue our lives happily, my ex-husband and father-in-law lived together in a small house. We even heard thieves broke into their tiny house, beat them up, and took their belongings. They were always arguing and fighting about everything, even food. Eventually, they both got jobs as cleaners at a small bar where they got humiliated regularly by the rude customers. They did try to reach out to us countless times. But after my mother-in-law threatened to report them to the authorities, they stopped and focused on their miserable lives. Fair, isn't it? Angry, I tried to walk away, but Lawrence reached out and held me in place and wouldn't let me leave, and so I elbowed him in the nose, and then when he was stunned, I kicked him as hard as I could between the legs and left, and went over to my father's house. Hi there, my name is Kami, and my husband Lawrence is the cheapest man on the planet. Now I know how that sounds. Some of you don't believe me while the others are questioning why I would stay with him since I know that he is so cheap. But he wasn't always like this. When we first started dating, he was frugal, but he was much more reasonable. Like he would cut out coupons from the flyers that would come to our home and use them to get discounts on things. It was kind of nice, actually, as he managed to get us some pretty good deals sometimes. He was also really good at bargaining, and when it came time buying big-ticket items, he was always the kind of person that you wanted to negotiate for you. When we bought our first car together, he had somehow managed to convince the dealership to not only give us a free spare set of tires, but had them knock off an extra $3,000 off the price. I still have no idea how he did it, but he did. It was because of stuff like that that made me not mind that he was cheap so much. Sometimes he went overboard, but it also sometimes came in handy. I would often wonder how he had become so concerned with money, and he told me that when he was a child that his family was dirt poor, and that he vowed that he would never allow himself to have to live through that ever again, and had become money savvy in order to make sure he kept his vow. That is until one day when I sent him shopping with a long list of items that we really needed, and he came home with nearly nothing. Lawrence, I sent you to buy groceries. You were gone for over 4 hours and you barely bought anything. What happened?
Well, I got there and everything just cost too much money. Can you believe what they expect you to pay for some things?
Yeah, but you could have bought the store brand items. That would have saved some money. Where is the toothpaste or shampoo?
Those are some of the most expensive things. They had to go.
But we need them, Lawrence. What are we supposed to do without them?
Don't worry. There was a huge sale on hand soap. We'll just use that.
I just stared at him in disbelief. He actually expected me to brush my teeth with hand soap. Using it on my hair was bad enough, but to put that goop in my mouth was a step too far. I went to the store and bought all the things that he didn't buy, and when I got home, we had a huge fight. It was the first time in our marriage that we had fought like that, and afterwards he apologized and said that he wasn't sure what had gotten into him that made him make such odd choices. For a while, he got back to his normal routine. He would still be a bit cheap, but he didn't make any more crazy purchases. So, at the time, I just thought that it was a one-off occurrence, although I worried about what could have caused it. After all, maybe something could trigger it again and then who knows what he might do. Sadly, I would find out all too soon. There was a really bad flu going around, and even though I tried my best to avoid catching it, I unfortunately encountered someone that had it and caught it. It was absolutely awful. I was coughing constantly, and my fever was incredibly high. Between coughs and the throbbing of my headache, I begged Lawrence to go and get me some painkillers. I needed something to help get my fever down, and I was afraid that if I didn't, that I would need to go to the hospital. However, I was in no shape to go to the pharmacy, and Lawrence was too cheap to pay for the delivery fee for them to bring the medication out to us. But thankfully, Lawrence promised that he would take care of it and grabbed the car keys and went out. I'm not really sure how long he was gone for, as I was drifting in and out of being conscious. Suddenly, Lawrence showed up and offered me some pills. I was desperate, and so I didn't even look at them and just swallowed them with some water. 4 hours later, my fever was just as bad, and I was beginning to get concerned. Lawrence, however, promised that the medication would begin to work soon. He was my husband, and so I trusted him and took the pills. After I did, he walked around the room and checked the garbage pails. It was so confusing to me until he spoke.
You're using a lot of tissues. You know those things aren't cheap, right?
Lawrence, I'm sick. I can barely stay awake. If I need to use them, I will.
Well, maybe you can try to limit yourself to how many you use, or reuse them more than once. We aren't made of money, Kami.
I just ignored him, and eventually I think that he thought that I had fallen asleep. But before he left the room, he took the box of tissues with him so that I couldn't use any more of them. Not long after that, however, my stomach began to hurt, and I could feel my fever worsening. It was so bad that I began to hallucinate, but I was lucid enough to beg my husband to take me to the hospital, but he just kept saying all I needed to do was take more medication. Reluctantly, I did, but after I swallowed the pills, I went and hid in the bathroom and called my father. Dad, can you please come and take me to the hospital?
Kami, of course I can. Is everything okay? What about Lawrence?
Lawrence is here, but he just thinks I need to take this medication that he bought, and I think it's just making things worse. I have a terrible flu and my fever is dangerously high.
I will be there in 5 minutes.
I left the bathroom and went and sat on the porch until my father arrived. Honestly, though, I had no idea what time that he showed up, though, as I passed out, and then woke up in a hospital bed with a bunch of tubes going into my arms. I could hear some beeping sounds of the machines around me and the shuffling around of people's feet. Looking around, I saw Lawrence sulking in the corner. He had a black eye, a split lip, and sever cuts and scrapes on his face. Lawrence? What happened to me and what happened to you?
It's your fault.
What do you mean? Why am I in a hospital bed?
Your stupid father attacked me after he took you here. Why did you call him?
Because my fever was getting worse. Lawrence was so upset that he stormed out of the room. An hour went by and my father came in and told me that he found me passed out on the porch, and he rushed me to the hospital. The doctors there demanded to know what medication I had been taking, and my father couldn't tell them, but as it turned out, it was some kind of knockoff brand that was sold essentially by a drug dealer. It cost next to nothing, and my husband had bought it to save a few dollars. Well, his plan backfired, and the drugs that he had bought had caused my kidneys to shut down. If my father hadn't taken me to the hospital, I would have died. Thankfully, they were able to flush the drugs out of my system and put me on medication that finally brought my fever down and helped me fight off the flu. Okay, but why is Lawrence all beat up, though?
After the doctors told me that it was the medication that Lawrence gave you that almost killed you, I lost it and attacked him. He promised not to press charges, so long as we don't press charges against him for the medication.
I was furious with Lawrence. This was now the second time that his being cheap negatively affected our marriage. And on top of it all, I nearly died as well. When I felt well enough, I called Lawrence and demanded that he apologize for what he did, and that if he didn't, that I would divorce him. It must have scared him enough because he apologized like I had never seen anyone do before. He spent the next months nursing me back to health and apologizing to me every day for what he had done to me. Once again, I thought that that would be the last time that that behavior would rear its ugly head, but boy was I wrong. The months passed and we eventually got back into our old routine, at least until I began to feel sick every morning. It didn't take long for me to figure out that I was pregnant, and even though we weren't trying, I was still very excited, and I ran to tell Lawrence. I was a bit concerned that he wouldn't be on board with the idea, but he was just as excited as I was, and instantly began to think up baby names and how we would eventually take our child on family road trips. I felt completely at ease and happy that Lawrence saw this as a blessing just as much as I did. That quickly changed, though, when we began to go to classes that would help us get ready for the birth of our baby. The classes were great and informative, but they mentioned how much it would cost to deliver a baby in a hospital, and I saw an odd glimmer in Lawrence's eyes when he heard that. The expression that he had on his face worried me greatly. A few weeks later, I came home to find Lawrence in the living room with a bunch of packages around him. Among them were a small, inflatable kiddie pool, some small towels, and several bottles of hand sanitizer. What is all this stuff?
This is for the delivery. I looked into it, and you can deliver your baby at home with stuff like this and save a lot of money.
Lawrence, what are you talking about? All I see are things you could get from the dollar store. You can't possibly think that this is a good idea to deliver a baby using this garbage?
All of this cost less than a fraction of what the hospital would cost. I've watched a bunch of videos online, and I know what I'm doing. We can do a home birth. It will work out.
But with a home birth, you would still need people, like a doula or even a nurse. Did you even think to hire such a person? Also, none of this will be enough for a delivery. That pool is way too small. And what is all the hand sanitizer for?
To clean you and the baby once it comes out. This will save us so much money.
You can't be serious. This is a recipe for disaster. This will kill me and our baby, but you don't even care just because you can save a few dollars? That was it. That was the last straw. It was bad enough that he had nearly killed me because he was so incredibly cheap, but now he was endangering our baby. And even if the delivery went well, I suddenly realized that the child would have a lifetime of potential issues because of this man. Angry, I tried to walk away, but Lawrence reached out and held me in place and wouldn't let me leave. And so I elbowed him in the nose, and then when he was stunned, I kicked him as hard as I could between the legs and left, and went over to my father's house. Unfortunately, he was not surprised to see me and welcomed me into his home. Within weeks, I filed for divorce. I wanted to get all of the trials over and done with before I had the baby, and thankfully my lawyer made sure that it happened. The judge looked over what had transpired over the course of our marriage and granted me sole custody of our baby, as it was plainly obvious that Lawrence was unhinged and made decisions that would endanger the lives of other people. The judge also granted me a large amount of child support and alimony for the same reasons. But since we only rented the home we lived in, the judge decided to let Lawrence continue to live there. I instead lived with my father, and after I gave birth to my daughter, it turned out to be the best place for me, as my father would look after her while I eventually went back to work. Once the divorce was completely settled, things really worked out for me. I lived with my father for a few years, but eventually I did meet someone else, and while he is far from perfect, he is nevertheless perfect for me and for my daughter as well. And Lawrence? Well, he never married again. In fact, he never dated again, as it cost too much money. As far as I can tell, he lives in an assisted living home as he began to lose his mind after we got divorced. He began to stop bathing as he saw it as an unnecessary expense. As if that wasn't bad enough, he began to eat only noodles as he thought that they were the cheapest and most cost-effective food, and as such, he began to gain a lot of weight. I'm actually surprised that he is still alive, to be honest. I do feel bad that he has gone so far downhill, but I also count my blessings as well that I was able to get out before he did. I honestly don't think that things would have gone differently for him whether I was in his life or not. The only difference, I think, was that he would have taken me down with him. You can disagree with me, though, and I honestly wonder what you think. One day I got a knock at the door, and there were cops. They said they were there to arrest me because I robbed 5 men online. What are you doing here?
We are arresting you for bilking men of thousands of dollars.
No way!
Is that your picture? You told these men you loved them, and they gave you money, and you also asked for their credit cards. Now they are steep in debt. You are going to jail.
Then the cops showed me a dating website showing a picture of me wearing a pretty pink dress my sister bought me. It said I was single and looking for the right man. I couldn't believe there was a profile of me on the website. I told the cops that I was happily engaged, and they didn't believe me and booked me. My parents were also ashamed of me. Did you ever have a best friend? Someone who did everything with you when you were young? When I was growing up, my best friend was my beautiful twin sister, Denise. We played dolls together, went swimming in the summertime, and even did our homework together. When we were teenagers, I found it annoying that she liked everybody that I had my eyes on. Once I sat next to a boy that I liked, and to my surprise, she sat next to him too. Because she wore her hair long and curled at the end and smiled a lot, some boys found her appealing. I was upset that one boy I liked asked for her Snapchat. I let it go, but it happened again and again. Even though we looked alike, it was clear that Denise was more popular than me. Why do you keep trying to steal every new boy that I'm interested in?
You don't own them. These boys are free to do what they want. If they like me, it's your problem.
There are lots of boys out there. Find someone else.
Hey, don't be sore. Boys will be boys.
Over time, I started to be more outgoing, and some of the boys started to like me too. She also became rude to me and said I needed to lose weight and wear my makeup better. After high school, I went to trade school to become a hairdresser. She also studied to become a hairdresser. We also saw each other on weekends with our other friends. Then I met Ken at a party that Denise didn't attend because she was working at the time. We began dating for over a year, and then he popped the question. We planned to have an engagement party with friends, and although I felt uneasy inviting Denise, she was eager to attend. Afterwards, Ken told me at the party while I was busy with friends that Denise began flirting with him. She even asked him to cancel the engagement because she didn't think I deserved him. I was so mad that I immediately confronted Denise. I can't believe that you were flirting with my fiancé.
I was just being friendly.
Ken told me everything that you were all over him.
I wasn't. He was drunk. I was only serving hi.
I believed Denise and tried not to have a fight with her over what I felt were small things. Then one day, Denise said she would take me shopping and surprised me by buying me lots of pretty dresses and purses. I asked her how she was able to afford this. She said it was because she was paid lots of commission for her sales jobs. We seemed to be getting along fine all over again. I was so happy. The next week, she told me she was going on vacation to Australia and didn't know when she would be back. I wished her well and went back to work as a hairdresser and made plans for the wedding. One day I got a knock at the door and there were cops. They said they were there to arrest me because I robbed 5 men online. What are you doing here?
We are arresting you for bilking men of thousands of dollars.
No way!
Is that your picture? You told these men you loved them and they gave you money, and you also asked for their credit cards. Now they are steep in debt. You are going to jail.
Then the cops showed me a dating website showing a picture of me wearing a pretty pink dress my sister bought me. It said I was single and looking for the right man. I couldn't believe there was a profile of me on the website. I told the cops that I was happily engaged, and they didn't believe me and booked me. My parents were also ashamed of me. I cried myself in the cell overnight until I was released on bail on Monday. I was too embarrassed to call my fiancé, and I told him I was sick with the flu. As soon as I got out, my boss Tony wanted to know what happened to me. I told my boss that I was booked for conning men on a dating website. But I told him that I was never on that site. He told me to take a few weeks off. Then I talked to my friend Jane, who went to grade school with me.
Maybe it's your sister who's up to this.
Maybe you are right. Denise looks just like me.
I know you all my life, and it's not like you to do things like that. You shouldn't go to jail for someone else's crime.
I decided that my friend was right all along. I was innocent, and I needed to prove to the cops that I was not a con artist. But how? My friend told me to hire a private investigator. Donald, the detective, went online to find out what Denise, my twin, was doing in Australia. Donald pretended to be interested in Denise on a dating website. He chatted with Denise using different names she made up. Donald figured out that Denise was lying a lot. Denise created fake stories to fool the guys she was talking to. Donald also asked people in Australia about Denise, finding out more about her tricky ways. Donald worked with legal experts to build a strong case against Denise. I told Donald that Denise needed to come home to face the charges so that the charges against me could be dropped. He pretended to be someone who could offer Denise a great business opportunity if she came home. He promised her a brand new BMW and tons of cash. She took the bait, and as soon as she landed, Donald arranged a meeting. After being released on bail, I asked the police officers to put a listening device on me, since I planned to confront my twin. I met her inside an office all wired up, and then I walked up to her. Hi, there.
Hey, how are you doing, sis?
Don't call me sis. You got me in jail over all your con jobs. You posted pictures of me while you took the money from all these men. How could you?
I needed the money, girl. Why don't you come to Australia with me? I am here to meet a man who is going to give me a new car and tons of money.
Cops have charged me when they want you.
Deny it, girl. Just say someone put up a fake profile. I couldn't resist using your photo. You looked so pretty in the dress that I bought you.
After I got her on tape admitting that she posted my photo online, the cops came out and arrested her. She was so angry that she slapped me and said I was a traitor. I called my parents, who raced over to confront Denise.
Thanks for helping me, Mom.
Are you kidding? You have disgraced us, Denise.
You have disgraced the family name.
If you only gave me a decent allowance, I wouldn't have to ask strangers for help.
You used me. How could you?
I will make sure we can escape to Australia.
My sister just didn't get it. She didn't understand how wrong it was to fool people and take their money. I was also a victim and she felt no empathy. The cops threw her in jail, and my parents wouldn't even post a bail bond. When the court case came up, I testified against my sister. The detective Donald also presented all the evidence. Then, to my surprise, my sister took the witness stand and kept pointing the finger at me as the con artist.
Very well. State your name for the record.
The divine Denise.
What do you have to say?
It's ridiculous. My sibling Sarah is the real con artist here. She framed me because she was jealous of my success.
That's a lie, Denise.
Order in the court. Let's proceed with cross-examination. Denise, can you provide any evidence to support your claim?
She was always trying to compete with me. I bet she had some plan to ruin me.
That's another lie back when we were young. You have always been the one jealous.
Your Honor, we have concrete evidence, including chat logs, financial transactions, and testimonials from victims, all pointing to Denise's online scams. There is no evidence of framing or jealousy.
Well, they must have deleted it. I'm telling the truth.
The evidence speaks for itself, Your Honor. The defense's claim is baseless.
I was so relieved when the whole court thing was over. My fiancé, Ken, stood by me throughout the entire trial, and he wished for Denise to spend her entire life in jail. My parents disowned her and removed her from their will. The judge declared that Denise was guilty of all charges. Denise hung her head and later learned that the judge sentenced her to 15 years in prison. She also had to repay all the money she stole from the male victims. It was like karma catching up with her, showing that dishonest actions have consequences. When the judge asked me if Denise deserved any leniency, I firmly said no, even if we are twins. I don't plan on visiting her in prison, ever. In the meantime, Ken and I are planning to get married in Hawaii. My parents said I was welcome to dispose of all the fine art, gold jewelry, and designer clothing in Denise's old room and use the sale of her items for myself. I think I will do that. After all, she needs to pay for what she almost sent me to jail for her crimes. I am planning on sending her postcards of me and Ken having a good time in Hawaii while she rots in jail. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.
No, I don't. And I can't believe I couldn't see the real you until this moment. I'm sorry, but there is no way I would marry someone like you. Enraged, Michelle turned towards me and tried to kick my guide dog but slipped on her own dress and fell down the short flight of stairs that led up to the altar. So let me start off by saying that my name is Josh, and I haven't always had the easiest life. Thankfully, I was raised by some of the loveliest parents around. They have always been incredibly supportive. Even my brother Abe and I have an amazing relationship. The thing that has made my life challenging, though, was that I was in a terrible accident when I was younger. I was playing in an abandoned building when a canister of chemicals fell on me and damaged my eyes so much that I was left blind for the rest of my life. I have to admit that I found my new life terrifying, and I really didn't know how I could possibly live the rest of my life without my sight. It sent me into a deep depression, and it took me many years before I finally was able to dig my way out of all the self-pity and helplessness that I was feeling. Eventually, I did indeed find a way to live my life, and even found a way to actually be able to live my life to the fullest. To start with, I had to find something that I could do for a living, and Abe suggested that I start up a vlog. At first, it sounded silly, but I eventually came around to the idea and started one, and it has made all the difference in the world. I had never thought that people would want to watch me live my life, but that I could also make a career out of it. I use several apps to make it possible for me to interact with my audience. Apps that read out comments to me, as well as convert my speech to text for when I want to comment back. Plus, my parents and Abe all help me when I can't use such apps. You would be surprised how user-friendly technology has become to people like myself. As you might imagine, meeting people became quite difficult as well, but the more comfortable that I became with my disability, the more independent that I became. However, Abe didn't have that excuse. Abe was always a very charming and attractive man, but had bad luck when it came to picking women. He had a bad habit of dating women that were pretty but were awful people. He was such a good person and just couldn't see anything negative in other people. So when he called me up and told me that he had started dating someone, I was a bit skeptical. Hey bro, how's life? Pretty good. How about yourself? Great, actually. I met an amazing woman that I know that you and our parents will love. Oh yeah, that's great. When do we get to meet her? Tonight, actually. Considering his past relationships, I wasn't expecting much, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. As I was dropped off by a cab, I was finishing up a live stream from the day. I had taken my seeing eye dog to the park and was telling people all about the program where I got her. It was important to me to bring awareness to the wonderful program that I got her from. As I was nearing the end of the stream, I got into a cab that would take me to my parents' house. The driver informed me that he had pulled up in front of the sidewalk that led to the front porch, and I paid him and stepped out. As I was leaving the car, I placed my walking stick down and started walking the front door, when my dog indicated that there was someone standing a few feet in front of me and that I should stop moving. I could hear her turn around and sigh heavily.
Oh, whoa there. Can't you see where you're going? You almost hit me with that stick of yours.
Unless my dog isn't doing her job right, I should be several feet away from you.
Oh, you're blind. That explains why you were heading to the wrong house.
I had a bad feeling in my stomach. Something told me that this woman was Abe's new girlfriend, and we were already off to a bad start. I quickly told my audience that I would be ending the stream for the day and turned off my phone.
Oh my God. Not only are you blind, but you're one of those so-called influencers too? Did you just say goodbye to the 3 people that follow you? It's no wonder that someone as poor as you would be trying to get sympathy from people in such a rich neighborhood as this.
I actually have over 2 million followers, and there were over 200 in that stream. But listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot.
Honestly, I don't care. You can just leave now, because when my boyfriend arrives, he's gonna kick your butt. So you better just move on. He's wealthy and belongs here, unlike you.
Just then, I heard Abe approaching. I knew it was him by the scent of his cologne. He always wore too much, and it was always the same brand. Hey bro, looks like you already met the love of my life. Michelle, let me formally introduce you to my brother Josh. Josh, this is Michelle. Yes, we met. Maybe we should just head inside and introduce her to our folks. Although I can't see, I'm pretty observant about the world, and I could feel the shift in the mood. Michelle had been taken by surprise, and Abe was oblivious to the tension that she had created. The silence spoke volumes. After a few awkward seconds, we went into the house. Our parents greeted us there, and things went fairly smoothly until dinner. I went to sit in my usual spot and found that my chair had been moved. As a blind person, having things in consistent locations makes my life a great deal easier. I had thought that my mother was in the room, but it turned out to be Michelle. Hey, Mom, can you help me find my seat? I didn't realize that you had rearranged things for our guest.
Oh, am I in your spot? I wanted to sit next to Abe. I didn't know there was assigned seating.
Of course that's okay. I just need to know when things change so that I can adjust accordingly.
I'll try to keep that in mind. It must be nice for you to come over, eat good food every so often.
I'm actually a good cook.
Well, no, I meant that. It must be nice to visit. People are well off like your parents and Abe. Being poor makes it hard to eat healthy and good food.
Things were not getting any better, and I could sense that Michelle was less than impressed with me. Plus, I was very confused why she was convinced that I was poor and that Abe was wealthy. While Abe wasn't remotely poor, he barely made half of what I did with my vlog. It didn't matter though, so long as Abe was happy.
Does your dog have to be in here with us? I don't want dog hair in my food.
It's my seeing eye dog, so yes. I'm sorry if her presence bothers you, but I need her with me. After that, Abe and our parents joined us in the dining room, and we all sat down and ate our meals. I chose to stay silent about Michelle's behavior, as I just assumed that maybe it was her being nervous. But as the months ticked by, she continued to be very rude to me. It hurt me to continue to stay silent, but Abe was so happy, and I didn't want to do or say anything that might jeopardize his happiness. But then he announced that he had proposed to Michelle, and my heart sank. This awful person was now going to be a member of our family permanently. The day before the wedding, we all gathered at the church for the rehearsal, and Abe had asked me to be his best man, and of course I had accepted. However, Michelle had made an incredible fuss over it, so much so that I thought for certain that Abe would finally see her for the terrible person that she was.
Well, yeah, it's okay if Josh is your best man, but does he have to bring his dog down the aisle with him? Couldn't we just have the maid of honor show him the way?
Yes, but his dog is important. Without his dog, he has no way of navigating through the world. And if the maid of honor ever has to do something, he will be left without any guidance at all.
Except I don't want that animal in any of our wedding photos. It's bad enough that he'll be wearing sunglasses the whole time.
I could tell that Abe was bothered by this, and I did appreciate him sticking up for me. In the end, Michelle relented and allowed me to have my guide dog, although I didn't trust her, and sure enough the next day, I found out that I was right not to. As the ceremony began, I couldn't find my guide dog, no matter how much I called for her. However, the ceremony had to begin, and so I allowed the maid of honor to escort me. It was so jarring and worrying to stand up at the altar without my guide dog. I felt truly blind in that moment and tried to hide my panic as best as I could. Abe squeezed my hand and held it in support of me. Suddenly, though, my mother came up to me and handed me the leash to my dog. "Oh, thank you, Mom. Where was she? Is she okay?" I could tell by the tone in her voice that something was upsetting her. She did not sound happy at all.
We found her locked in a closet in Michelle's changing room.
But how did she get there?
Oh, I think we both know how.
She was right. There was no other way around it. Michelle had locked my guide dog in her changing room so that she couldn't be a part of the wedding. This was a step too far, and I wanted to say something, but I waited until just the right moment. The ceremony began, and Michelle came down the aisle to meet us at the front of the church. The priest then began to speak, and when he said that famous line, I jumped in and spoke my piece. "Should anyone present no of any reason that this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now, or forever hold your peace." I object. This woman is an absolute monster, and a gold digger as well. "Josh? What are you talking about?"
Oh, will you just shut up, you horrible cripple? You're ruining my wedding.
"No, Michelle! You ruined your own wedding by being a monster." "Abe, Michelle has had issues with me since we first met. My guide dog was found in her dressing room, locked in her closet. She purposefully tried to keep her away, despite the fact that I need her with me at all times." "Michelle, is this true?"
Well, I mean, you can't prove that it was me that put her in there.
Plus, she is only marrying you because she thinks you're rich.
What do you mean? He is rich, unlike you.
No, I'm not. I mean, I do okay for myself, but compared to Josh and my parents, I'm not rich at all.
Wait a minute. What are you saying? Are you saying that you don't have as much money as this blind idiot?
No, I don't. And I can't believe I couldn't see the real you until this moment. I'm sorry, but there is no way I would marry someone like you. Enraged, Michelle turned towards me and tried to kick my guide dog but slipped on her own dress and fell down the short flight of stairs that led up to the altar. I could hear her hit the bottom of the steps hard before she screamed in frustration and then ran out of the church. I counted my blessings that she hadn't successfully kicked my guide dog and that she had made a massive fool out of herself in the process. I felt so bad that I had ruined his wedding, but Abe assured me that I had done him a massive favor. As it turned out, Michelle was drowning in debt and had seen Abe as a way to escape that debt because she thought that he was rich and would pay for her to be debt-free and to have a lavish lifestyle. Had he married her, he would have been ruined financially. It was true that he made good money, but she owed more money than he could ever afford to pay off, and the minimum payments alone would have drained his bank account within a few months. Abe was so grateful that I had rescued him, but I felt angry at knowing that had things hadn't happened the way that they did, that he would have been completely ruined, and so I chose to do something that I normally wouldn't. Thankfully, Abe and Michelle had hired a videographer for the ceremony, and they had filmed the whole interaction. I managed to get a copy of the video, and I posted it to all of my social media accounts and put her on blast. The backlash against her was intense, but more than warranted. I begged my followers to not attack her, but to also not give her a chance to hurt anyone else. That anyone getting involved with her should know what kind of person that she actually was. As a result, I heard that she ended up losing her job as they saw the video and didn't want anything to do with someone that would attack a guide dog. I'm not sure what became of her, but the last I heard of her, she moved to another city and had even changed names. Honestly, she was just lucky that her kick missed though, as I would have pressed charges against her and ensured that she went to prison. Thankfully though, there is a happy ending to this story. Abe did eventually find someone that not only was a genuinely good person, but was a perfect fit for our family. In fact, she was the woman that had trained my guide dog. They truly do make the perfect couple, and knowing how happy they make each other has even made me wonder if I should begin trying to find someone to spend my life with as well. Perhaps I will. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.
She's always been the lucky one. Got called the beautiful one, more popular and loved than I was. Never added weight, no matter how much she ate. She got called by various model agencies and refused while I struggled to get even one to notice me. She traveled to Italy and decided to leave you with me, who she thinks is poor and unfortunate, didn't she? Well, who's dead now?
She burst into laughter again. I stood up in an attempt to head to my room when she stopped me.
Pack your things and leave my house. Your mother's dead. I have no business with you anymore.
I didn't refuse. Even though I had nowhere to go, I needed to leave that house. One of my nurses walked into my office and informed me that the mother of a patient was desperately requesting to see me. I wondered why, but I allowed her in. The moment she walked in, sobbing loudly, I recognized her immediately. The sight of her brought me so many memories, especially of my mother. Hi there, my name is Owen. My mother left the States when I was only about 8 years of age. Things weren't rosy for us, and no matter how she tried, her job wasn't doing enough. She was lucky to get a job which seemed to be our gateway to a good life. However, she wasn't allowed to take anyone along, so I had to stay back. My mother had lost her parents, and I never knew who my father was, nor did I know his family members. There was nowhere to have me stay, except her sister, Aunt Kathy's home. Aunt Kathy was my mom's elder sister, an only sibling, the only one she could turn to. When she was told about my mother's wish for me to be with her until she could be permitted to be with me, she agreed without hesitation. According to her,
Your child is mine too, Brenda. I'll take good care of him.
my mother was relieved. She thanked her sister so much and promised to repay her more than she expected. I wasn't familiar with Aunt Kathy and her 3 kids, so all I did that day was sit quietly and listen to their conversation. Since she'd agreed, my mom began processing her departure. It was quite a hard period for me. I was used to being around her. The thought of having to be with others was quite hard to digest. However, my mom assured me that Aunt Kathy and her family were good people, and she was jealous knowing that I wouldn't think about her due to how good they'd be to me. The day my mother finally traveled was the day I was made to realize that I'd always think about her. I was made to sit in the living room without food or water from when my mother left me until midnight when she called to inform them about her arrival in Italy. I heard her ask to speak to me, but my aunt lied to her that I'd fallen asleep.
He's been playing all day with the kids. You know how they are. I put them to bed after dinner.
I was still clutching my box, and her kids were having dinner. How could she tell such a lie? I wondered. My mom hung up a few minutes later, promising to call the next morning. That night, I was made to go to bed on the cold floor in the living room without food, water, or even a bath. The next morning, my aunt and her husband made me do the dirty dishes, while her kids, who were all older than me, busied themselves with the television. When my mom called again, my aunt sat in front of me while I spoke to her and made me say good things about her to keep my mom at rest. The next day was a Monday. I woke up early to prepare for school, only to get yelled at by my aunt to take my uniform off and go resume the chores.
School? You shouldn't think about that anymore, boy. You have to work in my house for food. When your stupid mother brings some money, I can consider letting you return to school.
I was devastated. I loved school. I always topped my class, which made all the teachers love me. The thought of having to be away from school destroyed me. After chores that morning, I crawled back into the small room I was given and cried my eyes out. At such young age, there was nothing I could do except cry. My aunt and uncle both left for their individual workplaces, leaving me all alone in the big house. I walked out of my room later on because I was hungry, but got my eyes clouded with tears again. The bowl contained the leftovers of my cousin's dinner. My little self sat on the floor, sobbing loudly and calling for my mother, who couldn't hear, even if I cried in my loudest voice. An hour later, when I got too tired, I got up and dug into the food. It tasted as though it was starting to get spoiled, but there was nothing else for me to eat, so I gobbled it all up. Life went on like that for me. When my mother began sending money, I was sent to a public junior school. 6 months later, my cousins had a change of school. They were taken to a more expensive one, while mine was changed to a cheap one. I was glad. Even though it was cheap, I was quite comfortable. The bullies at the public school made life nearly unbearable for me. My aunt and her family had a change of lifestyle. They were always going shopping and gave their kids everything they asked. They also refurbished their home and made it more beautiful. I thought her husband got a better job, but I was wrong. I would later come to discover that my mother's job paid her handsomely, and she regularly sent huge sums of money to my aunt for my upkeep. Rather than take care of me with it, my aunt lavished it on herself and her family. I was able to cope with everything that was happening. Once, my mother offered to start processing my documents to finally come stay with her. But my aunt managed to convince her that I was fine with her. She even made me lie to my mother that I preferred being in the States. I cried a lot afterward. I wanted to leave, but there was no way. You would think her kids or husband was at least a little nice to me, but they were worse. Her husband would hit me mercilessly at the slightest provocation, and the kids always created some sort of trouble and put all the blames on me. Of course, their parents believed them. They would stare and make jest of me while I get punished for their mistakes. 8 years later, at age 16, I finally finished senior high school. My aunt hated that I graduated before her last child, who was a year older than me. So she made me skip my graduation and made everyone believe that I was ill and couldn't move. When a few friends came over to visit, she had me lay in bed and pretend to be truly ill. She cried about not having money to take me to the hospital, and my friends were forced to contribute the amount she told them I needed before they left. I was utterly embarrassed. 2 years later, on my 18th birthday, which of course wasn't celebrated nor acknowledged, an unfortunate call came in to inform us about the sudden pass of my mother. My aunt cried her eyes out over the phone, but once the call ended, she burst into a loud laughter. A mixture of pain, sadness, and anger coursed through my veins.
Well, it took you long enough. I've been waiting for this all my life.
She went on to say how she's hated my mom right from when she was born. Since my aunt experienced being an only child for 5 years, she wasn't happy when my mother was born.
She took the love and attention from me, that wench.
My whole body was quivering. I couldn't move. All I did was sit in the chair and listen to her in tears. I hadn't seen my mother since she left, only to hear about her death 10 years later. I was distraught.
She's always been the lucky one. Got called the beautiful one. More popular and loved than I was. Never added weight, no matter how much she ate. She got called by various model agencies and refused while I struggled to get even one to notice me. She traveled to Italy and decided to leave you with me, who she thinks is poor and unfortunate, didn't she? Well, who's dead now?
She burst into laughter again. I stood up in attempt to head to my room when she stopped me.
Pack your things and leave my house. Your mother's dead. I have no business with you anymore.
I didn't refuse. Even though I had nowhere to go, I needed to leave that house. I dashed into the room, grabbed the little clothes I had and other important things, then left the house. I'd barely taken 5 steps away from the gate when a man suddenly stopped me. He asked if I was Owen. I nodded that I was. He asked about the name of my mother. It was weird, but I answered. The man pleaded that I come with him, and I did. At the restaurant he took me to, he explained to me that my mother had been sick for quite a while and had willed all of her properties to me. He revealed that he was her lawyer and had been searching for me. He was on his way to my aunt's house. I couldn't believe my ears. The man proved to be telling the truth when he produced evidence of his words, including a video of my late mother reading her will out loud. Through the lawyer's help, I was able to go to Italy and begin a fresh life. There was more than enough money for me to begin college to study my dream course, which was medicine. My mom also owned 2 mansions, so I loved in one and rented the second out. 7 years later, at age 25, I'd become a well-known, successful doctor who managed 2 hospitals of his own. Then one day at the hospital, I saw a woman crying in front of me. I quickly recognized her. I was touched by my growth, so I walked up to her. I see you don't recognize me anymore, Aunt Kathy. Anyway, I'm Owen, your nephew. I could see her face turn pale as I reminded her of everything she did to me. She went on her knees with her husband immediately, rubbing their palms together while in tears.
Forgive me, Owen. I let my stupid jealousy take over me. Help me, please.
She explained that her last kid was diagnosed with kidney failure. Before diagnosis, they'd lost a few properties as a result of a scam project her second son got involved in. That pushed him into depression, and he'd become a chronic alcoholic. Her first child had been diagnosed with an incurable STD as a result of sleeping around. They had to sell their house and move to a smaller one just to afford getting the last child admitted to my hospital. She begged me to forget the past and help her last child, who was the only one with a good behavior. She had no money to pay for donors. I burst into laughter and had my security throw her out of my office. He was the last child, but what he made me go through was nearly up to his mother's. He eventually passed away, as they couldn't find a donor or pay for one. The shock from the news affected my aunt so badly, leading to a full-body stroke. My uncle begged that I treated her while he sought around for the money, but I refused. He tried for 2 days, but he couldn't come up with even a quarter of the money. On the third day, he was forced to take her away. "Have fun, losers!" I yelled after them, my heart filled with happiness. Karma does exist, doesn't it?